Good afternoon. This is Conversation with Kiki, and it is Tuesday, October 17th, 2017. And I could not be more excited than to have somebody from Cafe Lena with me. And although you are in Nashville, Tennessee right now, Piers, I have Piers
Actually,
Pettis with me today.
hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is terrible. Actually, I'm closer to Chattanooga. I'm in a
Oh,
corner of Alabama at my home on Lookout Mountain.
okay. I know
But I'll tell you about it. Sorry.
I know exactly where that is. I've been there once.
Boy, we just got started. I've already screwed up this interview. Good job.
No,
Here.
you're not screwing anything up. I'm just so glad to have you on, especially.
Oh well, I am delighted to be on, and I've enjoyed corresponding with you, and it's good to hear your voice.
Well, it was great hearing your voice because this morning I watched your YouTube at Cafe Lena.
Cool.
And, I have not been up there yet since the renovation. But, I walked through Cafe Lena before the renovation.
Yeah.
And just to give you a little bit about my history with Cafe Lena, my brother happens to be a music producer who lives in Saratoga Springs.
Okay.
I don't know if you met him when you've been up there performing. His name happens to be Joel Moss. And, The Music Never Dies, the big production that they did for Cafe Lena. Well, he co-wrote that. And
wow.
So we play it all the time here on newclevelandradio.net. And he and Sarah Craig from Cafe Lena have been our inspiration. And that cafe just, it has so many memories. And you played there even before the renovation. So tell us a little bit
I played
about your
there since
history.
the late 80s. I knew Lena very well.
In
In fact, I wrote a song about Cafe Lena that back in the 80s, which helped me win the Kerrville New Folk.
Really?
Yeah, because the hosts or the judges, one was Ian Tyson and the other was Jim Rooney, from both of and Jim, of course, and Ian both had played Cafe Lena, so it was like a sentimental. I guess I cheated really with that song, but anyway, so I have Cafe Lena to thank for that.
So, tell me what Cafe Lena really means to you, because people who are listening to this may not really understand, the essence of it. When I tell people that, performers like Bob Dylan, got his start there, they sort of look at me like, oh, sure, and it's like, no, really. And that performers like yourself, go there and perform, and, it's almost like there's this spirit that gets into your performance because of the essence of Bob Dylan and Arlo Guthrie, and
sure,
that makes you even better than who you really are.
Oh, well, that's certainly true, but there are certain rooms around the country. Lena's is one of them. I guess you would say, I don't know, the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, Passim in Boston, or in Cambridge, actually, that are just, it's holy ground, I mean, Lena's is the oldest continuously run coffee house in the country. I mean, like we mentioned Passim, I mean, it's certainly been around a long time, but it's, before that it was Club 47, and it changed hands, but Lena's has been continuously run. Even after Lena died, Lena always had a little cadre of people around her who were helping her, and when she died, they just took over and kept it going, and they're still there. And one of the wonderful things now is that Lena's has been recognized as basically as a national historic site. It's a national treasure, and so they were endowed very generously, and they rebuilt the whole place, and it is gorgeous, state of the art sound. The room is now twice as big as it was. They have a gourmet chef. I mean, it's pretty amazing because, the Lenas that I knew, but it's the same people working there, and they're so proud of that place. And of course, when I first came to Lena's, Lena didn't know the difference between an XLR and a quarter-inch connector. So I got up to play, and I'm like, "Where do I plug in my guitar?" And she's like, "Oh." So I had to run a Radio Shack, and buy converters, just so I could do my show. But I mean, that's how humble it was. And yeah, Bob Dylan played there. He was probably 19 at the time. But it's, everybody has played there. Jesse Winchester played there many times. Gamble Rogers did his, I don't know if you know who Gamble Rogers, he's a legend in the South. In fact, amazing guy. And Gamble did his last show there. I mean, he played Cafe Lena's and he went home, and I don't know if you know the story, but he drowned trying to save a guy's life in the Atlantic. And so, there's just so much history in that place. And yeah, when you walk on that stage, there's something special about it, no doubt about it.
Well, just watch.
It's a shame you can't edit this, right?
No, we don't edit this at all.
I'm a talker.
Well, just watching your performance on the stage, it was, I got the chills because this summer my brother's family was up in Saratoga Springs, and they happened to be there when Peter Yarrow was in town performing. And my little nephew, Griffin, who is 10 years old, got up on stage, and he sang with Peter Yarrow with a group of people, but he actually, proved to Peter Palmieri that he could sing Puff the Magic Dragon as well, if not better, than Peter himself. And yet, here is a 10-year-old who got to feel the essence of Cafe Lena. And, in this world today where young people are so intertwined with electronics and playing games and don't even know what the world of music really is all about.
Well, that's interesting. That's true to some extent, but also I think it was Toffler who wrote a book about this a few years ago, and he predicted that as we moved more into into an electronic age, an age where we're connected digitally to each other, that this would create a counter need for what he called high-tech soft touch, meaning that there'd be an increasing interest in things like outdoor sports and acoustic music, and that's actually happening. My oldest son is part of a movement in Nashville. We call them, the banjos and beards crowd. It's sort of a hipster acoustic thing that's growing all over the country, and it's all people in their 20s and 30s, and it's carrying on. And by the way, one of the cool things about Lena's is that those two groups sort of spill over. You have the old hippies and the old folkies, but you also have these young folks coming in now, and so it's pretty healthy. I think there's some amazing talent coming up from that group. Everybody's heard of Jason Isbell, of course, but there's a lot more where he came from, and so anyway, I don't know how to finish this comment, but I think we have a lot to look forward to.
Well, I think we do too, and you write a lot of your own music.
I write pretty much all of it. Yeah.
Wow. So where do your ideas come from? I mean, my son Alex, who's 27 years old, he doesn't write his own music, but he writes his own lyrics. And the reason he doesn't write his own music is he's never learned how to play an instrument. But he comes up with the sound in his head, and then he has to go back to his uncle and say, "Okay, this is the sound I'm coming up with."
Well, there's a lot of good writers who don't play an instrument. Carol Baker Sayer comes to mind, and she's co-written Dylan and a lot of other people. But I would advise him to find a good co-writer. There are a lot of good musicians who just aren't very good with lyrics, and he might turn into the next Elton John, Bertie Taupin, or Lennon McCartney or something. One of the things about being a pure lyricist is, you're not really distracted by the music. You learn, but there is an art to learning how to block out the meter and block out, to understand how the music part of it works. So you tailor your lyrics, excuse me, to fit that, so that a composer can look at it and go, oh yeah, here's the chorus, here's the verses, blah blah blah. But you're right. If that's what he's doing, that's great. I know a lot of good lyricists who aren't particularly good musicians.
But as I listen to your music today, there's a story
Hello?
behind your music. Do you struggle when you write your songs, or do they just come to you?
Well, I'll tell you, with me, and I've heard other writers say the same thing. I've written songs since I was 10 years old. I mean, when I was when I was an awkward kid, I wrote songs the way other people write in their diaries, and of course, needless to say, those songs were pretty self-centered. Later, as you mature as a writer, you begin to write about the world around you, and not necessarily your own world. You write about other people, and you learn to put yourself in their shoes and see things through their eyes. One hero of mine is a songwriter, Randy Newman, who writes from the perspective sometimes of some very unpleasant people. It's what you call the untrustworthy narrator. But that's the mark of a real writer. A real writer is about what he's writing, not just himself. It's not just confessional. Though there's nothing wrong with using your own experiences, but it's never about you. It's about the song. And so for me, my best songs really and truly have taken either 10 years or 10 minutes. That it just seems to be, I mean, sometimes I will sit down and an idea will just come out of nowhere, and it's like, boom, I know what I want to write, and I write it, and it's really good. And then there's other times where I have an idea, and I know where it needs to go, but it needs time, and I go back to it and back to it and back to it. There's a song I wrote called That Kind of Love, and I think that song took me years and years to write. But I wrote it a little at a time, and I'll tell you something cool. I thought that song was finished halfway through the last verse. That's where it was originally going to end. And I was getting up to play it at a festival out in Washington State, out on Orcas Island, actually. And I mean, the act before me was in the middle of their last song, okay, when it suddenly dawned on me how that kind of love should end. That, wait, the song isn't finished. It needs a little more. And so I had a little flip notebook, and I jotted down the words real quick, and then I went up there and played it. And that's the song you hear now. Isn't that cool? Wow. But sometimes it just comes like that,
So you said that you've been writing songs since you were 10 years old.
Right.
So did you...
The moment I picked up a guitar, yeah.
So did you really know when you were 10 years old that this was going to be your career, your lifelong dream?
Well, my parents thought my career was going to be in medicine. And I was then I wasn't doing too good in biology. And but at any rate, I always tell this joke that, my parents wanted me to be a musician, and I wanted to be a doctor, and I kept running away to go to medical school, and they'd come get me. But at any rate, I think I probably tried to fight it for a while, like, no, you don't want to do that. That's not realistic, and blah, blah, blah. But after a while, it occurred to me this is something I was sort of born to do, And it's the same thing with my three oldest children. Each one of them is a writer, really good writers, but I've discouraged them in every possible way. It's like, are you sure you know what you're doing here? But I understand, they were born to do this. It's just something some people are born to do. And so, from the time I was 10, I think I had a sense that I had this voice. I think it's partially a lot of writers I know are sort of introverts. I am, believe it or not, even though I'm doing all the talking here. I'm really sort of an introvert extrovert, and your interior life becomes your art. It becomes your music or your whatever you're doing, or your writing, or your sculpture, or painting, or whatever it is. And it just has to come out at some point.
Well, I read somewhere that you had sort of talked about that sometimes when you're performing, your voice is not always absolutely perfect.
No.
And yet, you just keep going. And,
yes.
What I love about that is that your voice is real. And if you listen to some of the best performers out there, and when I talk about the best, and I'm going to group you in with them, like a Bob Dylan and Arlo Guthrie, their voices aren't always perfect either. They crack, they kringle, and yet the essence of their music is phenomenal. The stories.
Well, you said it when you said keep it real. That's absolutely true. It's funny you bring that up, because I just watched Martin Scorsese. It's like a 3-hour film about George Harrison. And some of the best stuff in that film is Harrison was out on the road and he was having laryngitis. And his voice was worn out from touring. And he got up there and just sang his guts out. And it was wonderful. It was like, you didn't hear the pretty Beatles George Harrison. You were hearing George Harrison just, bringing it, right, in front of a huge audience. I mean, you can imagine how terrifying that could be, if you have laryngitis. But,
right.
I love that. I know exactly what you mean. It's great sometimes to see an artist come out and just say, screw it, I'm just going to sing the song, with whatever I got. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Well, and, that's one of the things that I have said to, my son. He's done, a number of public appearances. He doesn't, do a lot of live performances, but he has performed at the Rock Hall. He has performed for Autism Speaks in Chicago, and I've said to him, don't worry about perfection.
No.
Just go out there and enjoy yourself. And sometimes he'll say, Mom, I'm really sick, and I know my voice is gonna, it's gonna crack. I'm not gonna hit that high note. And I'll say to him, but you know what, Alex? It's gonna be the best you today. And
sure.
Sometimes when it's not his absolute, as he says, best recording, but it's his best hymn of the day, it's even better than what he could put on track. And
well, that's true. That's true. And, after all, when you're in front of an audience, it's theater,
right.
And it's just it's like being an actor. You just have to bring it. You have to conjure up, whatever that thing is that, it's a different kind of communication, really. But I think every good actor, every performer, probably every trial lawyer understands, that when you're up there, it's theater. And that's a dishonest thing. In fact, it's a very honest. Sometimes it's far more honest than your casual conversations. You reveal a part of yourself that probably you wouldn't normally, but you do have to bring it. No question about it. And it's scary. But I've heard it said that you don't really love anything unless you are willing first to make a fool of yourself for it. If you're not willing to walk out on that ledge, then you don't really love it that much. And that whether that's a performance or some girl that you're infatuated with or whatever, if you're not willing to make a fool of yourself, then you don't really love it.
Well, you're absolutely correct there. I remember, and I've repeated this many times on our shows here at newclevelandradio.net, that, I wanted to be in broadcasting when I went away to college. And I'm going to announce it in 1968. And my parents said to me, no woman is ever going to make it in broadcasting. You must get your degree in education.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
that's what they thought I was doing my first 2 years in college, that I was going for a
Right.
degree in education. And little did they know
And then,
that.
of course, a lady named Barbara Walters with
Yeah.
the speech impediment turned the whole world upside down there. So yeah, I hear you.
But
I hear what you're saying.
changed my major. They didn't know that, and but when
Hmm.
they found out, they said, "We're not paying for any more college here, honey. You
Oh.
can get your MRS and do that on your own. We're not paying for college." But yet, when my youngest was graduating high school, I said to my husband, "There's no way he's going to end up with his bachelor's or any other advanced degree without me completing my degree and me going on." So I ended up with my degree plus my master's in communication. He then,
Good for you.
well, thank you. And at that time, he then did his internship in broadcasting, and I said, "You know what? You're taking my dream away." And so I started podcasting, and now I'm working at his radio station. But before my mother passed away last year, she said to me, "Are you a famous broadcaster?" And I said, "Well, of course I am, Mom." And she goes, "Oh, my, why didn't you do that years ago? You could have been Barbara Walters." And I said, "Well, I'm just as famous as she is." So, when my mother passed away, that's what she thought I was. And, that's good with me. And I do sometimes make a fool of myself, but I do it,
You have to.
because I love what I do, and I love talking to people like you. Besides Cafe Lena, what other venue makes you feel like you're really sharing your voice at its best?
Well, I'll tell you, I've had the honor and the privilege, really, of playing in some pretty famous halls over the course of my alleged career. I performed at Carnegie Hall one time with a bunch of other people, and that was pretty cool. And I played at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville several times. And that's a stage where you walk out there and you just feel you talk about a place that's got some vibes, man. I mean, that's where Hank Williams played, And those are all, pretty special. But I think some of my favorites are some of the small rooms, like I mentioned, Passim and Cambridge. There's a place outside of D.C. Called Jammin' Java. It's in Vienna, Virginia. My friend Eddie Owen had Eddie's Attic in Atlanta. He's now moved out to Duluth, which is another suburb of Atlanta, and opened a bigger place called the Red Clay Theater. I've played both of those venues, and they're wonderful because Eddie's a guy basically had a hand in discovering the Indigo Girls. Eddie loves music beyond all reason. And so when you play in his room, you're in a place where you're really, really appreciated. Those are just a few. I love playing in Texas. There's so many good halls. I mean, there's Green Hall, of course, the famous old place I used to play, and there's what's the place? There's places in Austin. Several. Like Austin has like 150 clubs. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. It's just all. I just got back from Colorado a month ago, and man, I love Colorado. Colorado's like this place where, for whatever reason, bluegrass and acoustic and country all sort of merge, and it never really died out. It's just been this dynamo of music all these years, and all these artists like Tim O'Brien and Daryl Scott and all these other guys, all worked out there and lived out there. It's wonderful. You go out there in that audience, man, they are just down with whatever you're doing, So there's so many, and I'm totally blessed, to do this. I have no other marketable skills, I'm qualified to be a Walmart greeter right now. So, the fact that at my age I can still get up on a stage and there's people who pay money to come hear me, that's incredible.
Doing what you love to do.
Yes.
Do you ever get to Cleveland? Cleveland, Ohio, not
I
Cleveland,
do.
Tennessee.
I was going to say I've got some Cleveland and some Ohio connections. I lived in Marion, for 4 or 5 years.
Really?
My first wife, that's right. My first wife, her father was an English professor, and her first gig was at OSU branch campus there. And man, I loved it. It was, Ohio is not like, it ain't exactly the Rockies, but best people in the world. And that was one place I lived where all my neighbors knew me for me, and they didn't really care what I did for a living, When I was home, all we did was, all we wanted to do was sit around and watch football, drink beer, hang out, it was great. And I think ever since I lived there, I've had this little piece of Ohio probably, and I'm not being patronizing. This is literally true. I've had this little piece of it that I've carried with me. Midwest is it's like the most normal place I've ever lived, and I like that. I like that. As far as Cleveland, I can't talk about it, but I'm going to have a new album next year, and we are thinking of releasing some other stuff that definitely has an Ohio connection, but I can't talk about it. All I'm saying is watch this space, because when my new record comes out, CD, whatever it is, I don't know, brain implant, or whatever medium we're using then, that'll be around in May. And so I would say look for this, because we're going to have some really cool surprises.
Wow.
That we're also going to release, but it's a surprise, so I can't say any more. But I have definitely got some Ohio connections, and I can't wait to unleash them.
And it's interesting you bring up Marion, Ohio, because a couple of years ago, my husband decided that we should take an overnight trip. And I said, where are we going? He said, it's a surprise. And I said, okay. And he took me to all places, Marion, Ohio. I said, why are we going there? And he said, they've got some interesting things here. And one was supposed to be the Telephone Museum. Except, do you know where that is in Marion, Ohio?
No, I don't. I know I know the Warren G. Harding Memorial that they never finished. That's kind of sad, but that's there.
That was closed for renovation, so we couldn't get in there. But there is a telephone museum, but you can't get in there either unless you call ahead of time, because it's a one-room building.
It's private then.
Yeah, and everything he wanted to show me, you had to call ahead of time for reservations. So it was a great, not so great trip, but we laughed the whole time. It's interesting that you bring up Marion, Ohio. So now you and I have a connection.
My memories there are all good. And I wrote the first album I did for Windham Hill. Actually my first two albums for Windham Hill, I wrote while I lived in Marion. I had a little room. We rented this, was a 2 or 3 story frame house, just a normal neighborhood. And I had my office, studio, whatever you want to call it, upstairs. And I would just sequester myself up there with a little space heater and sit on the floor, and it was great. It was a great place to work. I remember my neighbors, and this was the 80s, okay? So this was during the Reaganomics, and Reaganomics were really, for whatever else people may think, it was pretty rough on working people on the Midwest. And for example, Marion, they had 4 employers, 4 like major employers. 3 of them went belly up. So that means a huge percentage of the town was out of work. And not to mention that, but all the farms were going bust, because, I remember that was during the farm crisis, where family farms, people that, farmed the same land for generations, were losing their farms. So that was rough, man. And yet, in spite of that, I mean, when I first moved there, my neighbors showed up at my door with like baked goods, and the first question is, what church do you go to? Because the whole town was either Catholic or Lutheran, because they're all German, and I'm like, I don't know, but I mean, I was really struck by that. These were really kind, decent people, and I don't think I've ever lived anywhere quite like that, to be honest. I mean, I've lived in some great places, but never like that. And like I say, it's not real picturesque, but boy, those people are the best.
Well, Saratoga Springs is very much like that too. So, but a little bit more expensive to live in. So, but a great place to visit. So, speaking
Absolutely.
of Saratoga Springs, I'm hoping that next year, about this time, hopefully we can get you up there to perform, because one of the things that NewClevelandRadio.net wants to do, and it's in the planning stages, is we want to do a 5K run up there to help support Cafe Lena. And it's something on my bucket list. And I don't care if I run it, walk it, crawl it, but I want to plan it, and I want to have as many entertainers that have performed at Cafe Lena or who want to perform at Cafe Lena be part of this great celebration, because I think Cafe Lena deserves to, have entertainers be there to perform together.
I'm sure you'll have no problem.
Oh, I'm sure we won't either. And I'd like to do another, performance of Where the Music Never Dies, maybe a different type of production, because the music shouldn't die.
No, and it won't. I mean, Lena's like I said, it's a national treasure, and everybody knows that. Besides that, it's an easy drive for both Boston and New York, so you'll have no problem getting people over there, entertainers and audience. I mean, I know people that come from quite long distances to see shows at Lena's, and so Lena's is going to be around for a while. I feel pretty confident about that, especially the new Lena's, which is just beautiful. Saratoga is a great town, isn't it? Have you ever been there? Ever been there over the holidays?
I've been there early summer, and I've been there race season, which it's way too expensive for me to be there race season, even with family there. Because,
oh, God, yeah, it's crazy. You didn't want to be there then.
Yeah.
Place fills up. It's, But the rest, I'll tell you, the time I love is over the holidays, because first of all, it's a beautiful town. It's got all this, like, Victorian architecture.
Yes.
And it looks like Currier knives.
Yes.
And at Christmas time, man, they really do that up. They hang wreaths everywhere. It's just, they got candles, and, man, it's beautiful. And, I mean, it's pretty cold there. It's pretty far north. Yeah. So, you got sleigh rides, and, I mean, the whole thing, it's great. That's a great place to go if you want to do a sort of a holiday season holiday, It's pretty cool.
Well,
but the races, no, I don't want to be there then.
Well,
you know what else is in Saratoga Springs? And I always mispronounce it. There was a famous retreat for writers. It was called Yadu. I forget, but it's like people like Flannery O'Connor and other just really notable American writers would go there and stay in these cabins and just work on their stuff. Did you know about that?
I didn't know about that. I'm going to have to check into that.
I wish I could remember the name. I'm getting to an age where I get everything confused, but I know it starts with a Y. If you Google Flannery O'Connor and Google Saratoga Springs, you'll probably come up with it.
I will have to do that and put that on our website. And if you're getting to an age where you're forgetting things, that scares me, because I know I'm older than you. So, hey.
Okay, well, yeah, you're on the radio live every day, too. That's going to be scary.
So, have your children who are in the music industry, have they performed on Cafe Lena?
I don't know. I think Grace has. My daughter Grace is doing really, really well right now. And by the way, she's got, as a writer and performer, she has 2 songs on Ruthie Foster's new album. She's been covered by Sarah Hickman and a whole bunch of other people. So she gets around both as a solo and as a duo, and with her band. She's out in 3 different configurations. My oldest son is buddies with the Avett Brothers. I guess you know them, down in Nashville, and he tours all the time with his band. But I don't think he's played Lena's. They play more of these kind of their their venues are a little rougher than that. And then my middle son George is out on the West Coast. He's out in Washington State. He also tours, but again, he tends to play kind of alternative rock kind of places. Like I don't know, the 40 Watt in Athens, or that's where he would be. So I think only Grace probably has played Lena's. That would be my guess.
Well, we're going to have to get them all on newclevelandradio.net because we do music of all sorts. Because we believe that, our audience should be aware of all kinds of music. And I'll give you an example. About a little over a month ago, we had an interview on our station that I did not do because the performer thought I did not understand his music well enough. And his mother and I grew up together, okay? And,
that was probably it.
Well, no, because it was alternative music, okay? And I admitted that she had convinced me that I probably wouldn't like his music, so I had not really listened, enough to it. And the performer is Krista Makes from Less Than Jake. And so I had somebody else do the interview. But I started listening to his music the day of the interview. And I was so upset with myself that I did not do the interview because I love his music. And it's like,
cool.
Why was I so convinced that I would not like alternative music?
I don't know. I don't know.
You just have to take a chance. You got to listen.
You got to check out my daughter's music. I think you'd like Grace a lot. She's pretty good.
So, well, I'll have to get in contact with her. We'll have to get her on.
She's also a Kerrville winner. She and I are the only father-daughter New Folk winners in the history of that festival, which is pretty cool. And some of the other New Folk winners have been everybody from David Wilcox to Steve Earle. So I mean that's quite something. And she's well, I shouldn't say this, but way better than me probably. And so we'll see. And she's only 30 years old. So there you go.
Dad,
well, I believe you mentioned you were going to play some of my music today. Is that going to be part of this, or
we will add at the end of the interview? So let me explain about internet radio, so those who are listening will understand why we're going to play it at the end of the interview.
Okay.
So our licensing, we can play music, but we can't put it up on our podcast with the music. Because
really,
yeah, isn't that terrible? We can put the interview up, but we can't re-put the music up.
Well, I'm ASCAP affiliated, so I think you can probably put mine up.
Well,
no problem.
We can play it because we're ASCAP, but they don't let us re-podcast it because there's other things, there's other affiliates that are part of that music. So
they probably don't want to pay us.
Yeah, I don't know. So we're allowed to put it on. We can put it on our website to replay it, but we can't put it on iTunes. So that's why we.
Well, can you do it live? You get to do it live, right?
Well, there still is a question about that. So that's why in podcasts, it gets so confusing, and that's why we do the interview.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that's such a hassle. I wish the lawyers would just get all this stuff worked out. It'd be really nice if we had a statutory rate, for example, for streaming music. And they can't even get around to doing that. So, I remember iTunes. It took years. I mean, they were holding everybody's royalties in escrow. It took years for them to work that out. And I'm thinking, come on, guys. Musicians aren't exactly the wealthiest people in the world. A lot of us would like to be paid for our work.
Exactly.
But I guess that's another interview for another day, right?
So, I mean, we've spent all this money on the ASCAP license, but if it's intertwined in the interview, then it gets pulled. So what we are going to do tonight, just so that you know, we do a music show every evening that does not get put up as a podcast. And so this evening, from 8 to 10, we will be playing your music, and that will be live. Okay, and then we will keep telling our audience when we do play your music. So we try to get around it the best we can.
Right.
And it's a tricky business, but we don't want to. We don't want to lose our license. We want to be able to promote you. We want the interview to be played over and over again, so people get to know who you are. Because I'll tell you, once I learned who you were, and then I played your YouTube, which again is on our website, and we're going to encourage people to go to the website and play it over and over again. They will be able to see that and hear you in your live performance. So that's encouraging. Where are you playing next?
Well, I tell you, I've got a week or so off, which is great because I've been on the road almost constantly throughout all of September and up to this point in October. So I'm going to be home through my son's birthdays, the end of October, and then I don't think there's anything else. But I think the next thing I do is I head up to Michigan first week of November. And it's actually a great honor. There's a thing called Lamb's Retreat for Songwriters, and I'm an instructor. And along with, I think Rod Picott is one of them, or maybe it's Clay, maybe it's Sade Cleaves. I can't remember because they're buddies. I always get them confused. But with several other really good, notable songwriters, and we're sort of the faculty, And we spend a week working with, old and young songwriters, prospective songwriters, and we share what we know or whatever. But also it's sort of unique in that everyone, including the faculty, everyone has to write a new song in the course of the week, and we don't know what it's going to be about. We are handed a theme, and it's like, okay, write about this. And each person's theme is different. This is John Lamb is the guy that puts this on. He's amazing. He's quite a talented guy himself. And but at any rate, so that's what I'll be doing for the first week of November. And then after that, I have to hurry down to Texas, and I have a bunch of gigs in Dallas, and where else? I think I'm outside of Austin, and north of Dallas, up near Denton, Texas. And then after that, I think I head to Florida, thank God, because it'll be cold by then. And I think that's about it for the rest of this year,
Wow. Well, we will link to your website so people can follow you, because we think it's really important. Where in Michigan is this? Right
now? Man, it's way up where the UP begins. You know where the Mackinac Bridge is?
I know exactly.
It's right near there. Beautiful place, by the way. Gorgeous area. Very isolated. In fact, when you get on the other side of that bridge, man, you probably got more timber wolves than people.
Probably.
But at any rate, it's a really gorgeous place to be, and we usually it's tricky that time of year because you could either have weather like we're having right now, or you could have 2 feet of snow. You just don't know. But at any rate, you're holed up in these cabins and in this sort of conference center, and we just work on songs and listen to each other's songs, play each other's songs. It's just a week of that. We also drink a lot, I guess, which is okay. And and it's fun. You meet folks from all over the country, and it's a good thing.
Well, I'm from Michigan, although I'm from the Lower Peninsula.
Where are you from?
Originally from the Motown area.
Okay.
So,
do you know Livonia?
Do I know what?
Livonia, Michigan?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I play the Trinity Theater there. That's another great room, by the way. I've done the Trinity for 20 years, probably.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's like a little playhouse, but they also have concerts. It's ideal place for acoustic, small acoustic concert, because it's, the room probably doesn't seat more than, 80 people or something.
Right.
But it's a theater, so you got the stage and the lighting and the, great sound. But anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't want to go off on that too much. Do you know Jan Chris?
No.
Well, she's from Detroit. I just thought you might know her. Don't all of you guys know each other? That's
you're just
surprising.
You have to introduce me to all these people you're telling me about. So,
well, it's like when I was in Ireland, people were like, I've got a cousin in Boston. Do you know him? I'm like, sure. All of us Americans, we all know each other. All of us, 300 million of us. No problem.
Absolutely.
But anyway, sorry.
We're going to be up in Detroit next week. I'm going back up there for a couple of days to meet with some people. I don't get up there as much anymore. My mom was living up there until she passed away last year, so that always drew me back up to Detroit. And so I'm trying to make an effort to, get back up there to still see some of my friends and connect with some of my relatives. But, it's not the same, when you had, mom there and all that. And now my one brother, Joel, lives in Saratoga Springs, and my other brother lives out on the West Coast. So we're all sort of split all over the country. But I love meeting people all over the United States, all over the globe, and especially people in the music industry, because it's not the same as it used to be. But you know what? It can be, and like you said, it's coming back. Acoustic music is it's making a resurgence. People sitting around the room and performing. We're not necessarily using big amplifiers and extra keyboards to make all this extra sound. We're using.
I remember years ago when I was at Muscle Shows. I started out at Muscle Show Town Studios. That's down in Alabama. But they used to say that this kind of music, it never makes anybody any money, but it never goes away, and you can't kill it. It's like a cockroach, it keeps coming back, and which is true, and it doesn't take much, it just takes somebody and a guitar, that's pretty much it. And it's lyric driven, which is nice. So it's half music, half poetry. It's got elements of both, and it's fun. It's a good thing. It's a special kind of audience. It's not for everyone, and that's fine. That's fair. And it's never going to take over the world, but it's never going to completely go away either, because at its core, it is folk music. I hate that term because it's like the F word, but it is music from the people. It's music from, just regular folks. And you just can't wipe that out. It's always going to be around in some form.
But it's music that you can hear, you can understand. And that's what I like about it. As again, listening to your YouTube video, I didn't have to strain to understand what you were singing about. Whereas a lot of music today, I have to try to hear what are the words and the sounds and the words and the beat. It to me just all mushes together, and I don't even know what I'm listening to. And sometimes you'll ask, younger people today, did you actually hear what those words were? And they'll say no. And it's like, but some lyricist, some writer put a lot of effort into writing, and you have no idea what that song says. And they'll go, no.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there's stuff like hip hop, which is lyrically, some of it is just brilliant. And kids, my older kids' generation, they understand every bit of it. And but that's a whole different genre. That's like slam poetry almost, And so it's just, I think each one of these genres has its own audience, and the audiences sometimes overlap. but each one has a different purpose. It's there for a different reason, and not always a good idea to compare them too much to each other. Some music's loud because it's just supposed to be. Some music's more about the way it feels. And some music, like I said, is like what I do a lot is lyric driven. Though I've written in other genres as well. I've written country and I've written jazz and stuff. And but those are way different. You have different expectations. Really, I guess is what I'm trying to say from these different forms.
At least you're keeping me aware and making me perk up and say, Karen, maybe you better listen a little bit better and don't interpret everything, and give some other music venues a chance. And
I don't know. For myself, I've tried to take things, within their own context.
Absolutely.
That this is for this. And so years ago, I used to, when I was a young performer, I would sometimes find myself in front of an audience that hated me, and I would take it really personally. Oh, well, F you too, audience, and it was not nice and not professional. And after a while, I began to realize that, sometimes you just are in the wrong place. Like if I was at a country and western bar with chicken wire in front of me, then I can't expect those people to necessarily like me, because that's not what I do. Right. And it's not their fault, it's not my fault. We just got mixed up and I ended up in the wrong place, So, and I guess you could look at this music that way. Don't expect hip hop to be like, Americana or acoustic music. And don't expect country to be like jazz. It's not going to be. They have their own purpose, and their own audience. So, and all that's good,
Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today, and we're going to have to do this again in the very near future. In the meantime, please have your daughter contact us. I'd love to have her on. I'd love to share, her thoughts, share her music, let our listeners hear her vocals, and have fun up in Michigan. I'm sure
she could say a lot of embarrassing things about me and her brothers, no doubt.
I doubt she will. She'll only say good things about her father. I guarantee you. And hopefully you will be in Saratoga Springs again very soon, and maybe we can get up there to hear you sing, okay?
Yeah, maybe I can get up to Cleveland.
That would be even better. I would love that.
Sure. Oh, hey, I'll tell you a great room. And it's a pizza place, of all things, in Columbus. Columbus, Ohio, is a place called Natalie's.
Okay.
They have music just about every night, and it's great. And the guy that runs it is a real fan, he's one of these people that loves music beyond all reason, And but he brings in some really good talent, and I'm proud to say I've played there a few times. So there you go. That's not too far a drive. What's that, about 2 hours from Cleveland, something like that, 2-3 hours?
About 2 hours.
There's some great festivals I know in Northeast Ohio. So, yeah, maybe I'll show up somewhere. I even do a house concert. Do you know where Charm, Ohio is?
Never heard of it, but I like the name of it.
Yeah, most people haven't, but it's in a really beautiful area. It's down in the Amish country.
Oh, beautiful.
Sort of toward Pennsylvania. It's where the hill. It's kind of rolling hills there,
Okay.
And but at any rate, these folks they have a farm. I was a working farm. They have a house concert on Sunday afternoons, and people bring potluck and stuff, and it starts in the middle of the afternoon. Everybody hangs out, and then that night we do a show, And so anyway, I'll find some excuse to be up there.
Okay, sounds wonderful. Well, I'm going to check out Natalie's in Columbus.
You really should. And by the way, their pizza is awesome. It's really good. And every time I played there, it has been packed. They pack them in. And it's not me, it's the place, So, I highly recommend that one.
Well, I'm going to go Google them when our show is over, and I'm going to find out when they're inviting you back. And
okay.
A 2-hour drive is no big deal. And even though it's OSU and I happen to be a UM supporter for the day I can be an OSU supporter.
Don't tell them that, okay?
I won't. I promise.
I mean, that could be your safety, is maybe a consideration.
As long as it's not on OSU U of M weekend, we're fine.
Oh, man. The first year I was in Marion, I'm from Alabama, okay? That's where I was raised. So you can imagine, the football down here is worse than religion. It's like, it's bitter, But I had never seen anything like Ohio, Michigan. I moved up there, and I remember one day I went to the bank, and everybody in the bank's wearing, silver and maroon, or the colors, OSU. And I'm like, well, what's up, And everywhere I went, and it was just like the entire state. I'd never seen anything like it. Oh, it's like they were going to war, That is one intense series, man, as you well know, I'm sure.
It definitely is.
Anyway, so be careful down there, okay?
Yes, we will be, I promise. So you be safe, and we will be talking to you soon, okay?
All right.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a good day.
Same here.
Okay.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.